This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And today, this is one of the most affordable and practical presentations that I love to give, and that's on this file server. We're going to take this workstation, convert it to this file server right here, and again, just like you saw in the thumbnail, this is $520. That includes 48 terabytes of hard drive space. That's 8 hard drives and 64 gigs of RAM. We're going to go over all of the parts, all the pricing, how to put it together. We're going to install TrueNas on it, check it out, check the performance. So let's get started. Okay, let's talk about the parts that we're going to need for a minute here. First of all, you're going to need this workstation. I'll go over again the pricing of everything in detail later on in the presentation. But this workstation is going to cost you roughly between $80 and $120. The reason why I like this workstation, it's actually HP's professional workstation server. So it works great to make a server because it takes Xeon chips. And the Xeon chip we're going to put in this, it's only $6. And it's 10 core, excuse me, 10 core and 20 multi-cores. It makes a great file server CPU, and you can run Plex on there as well. If you're running TrueNas and you want to throw Plex on there, you can do that. Or if you want to do this as a Linux server, you can do that as well. And so what I'm going to do really quick, I'm going to talk about in this particular case, we're not going to use the onboard controller card because we've got 8 hard drives and we want high performance with those 8 hard drives as well. So we're going to use what's called, these are server controller cards. Okay, this is an LSI controller card or compatible card. Now one thing about these cards that you have to realize, and I'll go over this in more detail on eBay, but you have to get it in the right mode. You don't want one that does RAID. You want straight throughput. They call it IT mode. And so this card with your cables, you can get them for around 40 bucks. Okay. And now, the other thing is, I'm going to go back to a different card here in a minute, but let's talk about the memory. The memory again, you can get 64 gigs of DDR3 RAM for 40 bucks on eBay. It's such a great deal. The prices have come down so much. I did this same video a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and I had the same system, but I was getting 20 terabytes, like 30 gigs of RAM, and it was still $520. Now I'm getting 48 terabytes for the same price that we got that one, plus 64 gigs of RAM. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about the hard drives for a minute. Now, before in the past, when I built servers before, I would always look for SATA hard drives, but they're harder to find anymore. And this is the deal about hard drives. Yeah, these are going to be used, but these are server hard drives. And what a lot of companies do, they rotate their hard drives every 5 years, but they still have lots of life in them. In fact, I've been running, I'm retiring a server right now. I just built one of these servers to be a file server, and I've had these same hard drives in there and I hadn't had one gone out yet. Doesn't mean they won't, but these are, and I've been running that server for probably, I don't know, at least 5 years, maybe more. And so these, and again, I'll go over this in detail on the pricing and where to get them. But this is HGST. It's a server brand, but this particular one is a SAS drive. This one here is a SATA drive, and I'll throw up a picture to show you the difference in the connectors. I'll show you how to get those SAS drives working with. Well, it's not just SAS drive. There's drives that are available on eBay now. A lot of them are 12 gigabyte throughput drives. This is a 6 gigabyte controller card, but you can still run this with this controller card, and I'll show you that in the setup, how you do that. But this particular bay enclosure takes SATA or SAS. And so let me just talk real quick. I know this is actually a 3 bay, and the reason why I have this here is because I've already got this one installed. I didn't want to take it out. But this 5 bay is $85. Okay, it's hot swappable, and so you can. I'm just going to put this back in here for a minute. I'm gonna open up this case so you can see inside here to see how I've done all this. But before I do that, let me go back, and there's another controller card that you can get. You'll spend a little bit more money on it, maybe between $70 and $80. But this is the same card. This is an LSI or LSI compatible, but it is a 12 gigabit card. It takes a little bit different adapters, and I'll have this on there too. When would you want to use this card? If you were doing a 10 gigabit networking, this card will give you 10 gigabit write speeds to your hard drives, because the hard drives that run on this are 12 gigabit, and that's that hard drive I put in here. Okay, if you want to spend a little bit more, you can do that. Right now I'm going to set this up with this one because that keeps the cost of this low. In my particular case, I'm going to use this as a backup server, so I will install this one because all of my networking is 10 gigabit. And if you want to learn more about 10 gigabit networking, you can watch my video on that. There'll be a link below on that. Also too, I'm not going to go step by step on how to put all these parts in here. I have another video that I created about a year and a half ago, and it goes step by step on how to put everything in. But I am going to open up the case and show you. And if you've built computers before, then this is easy peasy. If you haven't, it's not that difficult to throw this in, and so on and so forth, and put some memory in. A lot of times these come bare bone, no CPU, no RAM, no hard drives. Sometimes you might get one that does have a hard drive in it, some RAM, a CPU, but you're going to want a lot of the CPUs that these come with. They're not that powerful, so you're going to want to upgrade at least to that E5 27 or 2670. That's 10 cores, 20 multi-cores. So let's go ahead and open this up real quick, and I'll give you a quick tour. Okay, let's open up the case here. So what I want to show here is when you get this computer, right now you can fit 3 hard drives in here with the 5 bay in the front here. That gives you 8 drive spaces. Now what you can do though is normally this computer will come with these brackets here, and then you can just slide your hard drive in and then connect it. So, but as far as the computer goes, there's 4 bays here for memory, 4 bays here, and you can put more than 64 gigs of RAM in here, but you don't really need it with the setup that we're doing. And the only reason why I have that much RAM is because I'm going to put TrueNas on here. The more RAM you get TrueNas, the more efficient it is. Not necessarily the case with Linux or Windows, but my LSI card is right down here. You probably won't be able to see it, but it's just in one of the slots, and this has plenty of slots. It doesn't normally come with a video card, but sometimes when you buy one, it might have a video card in it, and then you can just use that video card. But in this case, this is the one I bought was bare bone, and so a video card maybe $10, $12 for a generic video card. This isn't plugged in because I've got to plug it in right there. So that's kind of the case. Now it's pretty basic. Your CPU fan's here. This is a fan for the memory on this side. And normally what I do when I build this into a server, I'll turn these fans up a little bit just so that it's drawing air across the hard drives on here. So I need to hurry. I'm not showing you how to do everything step by step because I want to hurry and get FreeNAS on here. But I also want to show you If these were SATA drives, then the card would recognize it right away. But because these aren't SATA drives, you got to go into the card setup, and then once it goes into there, it'll recognize them, and you can use these because again, these are SAS cards. Not that they're SAS cards, just the fact that they're 12 gigabyte pass-through cards, where the older SAS cards are 6 gigabyte, and again, it's really difficult to find SATA drives out there at a decent price because most of the corporations that are off selling their hard drives are these SAS drives that are 12 gigabit throughput instead of 6 gigabit throughput. But great price though, $30 a drive. That is an awesome price. Anyway, let's go ahead, get on the computer, boot it up, and let's get FreeNAS installed. Before we jump onto the server, in which I do need to show you the setup on the controller card. Most of the time you don't have to go in there, but there might be an occasion where you have to. Anyway, let's talk about why build your own server. The pros. The biggest pro of building your own is the cost. Especially if you build your server around the route that I've taken you and buying used hard drives. That's your biggest cost right there, is the hard drives. Flexibility. Flexibility, in other words, means you can make this a Windows server, you can make it a Linux server, you can make it an UnRaid server, you can make it a TrueNas server, and even with TrueNas, there are almost 200 different apps that you can run with TrueNas now, especially TrueNas Scale. So the cons, convenience. What I mean by convenience is that when you get into these NAS that you can just buy, you don't have to worry about putting anything together. You just put in your hard drives, and there might be a little bit of software setup to do, but you're not installing anything except for the hard drives. Flexibility. Sometimes, like say Synology, they have apps that are just specific to Synology that are quite helpful or handy, and that's why I say flexibility. But to me, there's more flexibility if you build your own. Okay, let's just take a look real quick on the cost. And again, I'm not picking on Synology. All of the NASs that are in this realm are expensive. I'm just using this as a comparison, and just so you know, just look at this here. This 8-bay enclosure is $13.99, $1,400 basically, and that doesn't even include the hard drives. That is just for the hardware. That is it. Look at this 6-bay one, $739 or $740. Does not include the hard drive. So anyway, we're just talking cost here. It's just so much more cost effective to build your own. Now maybe that's not the route you want to take on building your own. Maybe that's intimidating. And when I say build, I don't consider it a build. It's more or less we're taking a workstation and modifying it. And the stuff you're modifying is easy to modify on a workstation that's already put together. So let's go over the cost real quick. I'm not going to go over this in detail because I'm going to take some time to do that. But the HP Z420 you can get between $80 and $120. I put $100 there. The 5-bay enclosure that I have is $90. The 6 terabyte hard drives are $280. The 8-port 6 gig controller, $40. The 64 gigs of RAM and its ECC RAM, $30. You'll need 3 SAS to SATA converters or adapters. That'd be $24. The CPU itself, and I'll explain that later on too, $6. In the USB, that's actually a USB for $10, and I'll explain these in more detail. And that's $580. I mean, man, you can obviously see the difference there. And this server here is just going to be way more powerful than the NASs that you buy. So let's just talk about this workstation for a minute. Now, this is the thing that really a pet peeve of mine with these HP Z420 workstations. They take 2 different versions of Xeons. They take the EFI 2600, EFI 1600 version 1 and version 2, but these workstations, they don't there's nothing to indicate on them whether you're getting a version 1 or version 2. Now in my case, where I'm just doing a backup server, I bought the version 1, or I bought this one here, and with the shipping and handling, it was like $85, and it is a version 1, and I'll explain that when we get into the CPU. You just have more options when you get a V2, so you'd have to decide if you want to pay more for a V2, an HP that takes a Xeon V2 version. So, and let's just talk for a minute buying on eBay. I buy almost everything I have is used, with the exception of certain things, like this 8-bay or this 5-bay enclosure. And so if that scares you, I understand, but I've been buying used stuff from eBay for so long, I've hardly ever had a hiccup buying anything used from eBay. I'm not saying it can't happen, but usually also they resolve it pretty quick if there is one. But this right here, this is found on NewEGG, and I'll have the links to all of these below. And I'm gonna also have a link on how to step by step on how to put all these parts in the server, because that is not in this video. Like I said, I did a server build about 1.5 years ago where I went step by step on how to install all this, which is pretty easy. And this is a SAS and SATA. It's and again, it's really $89, and all of the things I'm talking about here include shipping and handling. So, and then and let me go back to here real quick. So this is very, very, very important. If you have a 5-bay that you know of and you want to buy that, just hold on a sec. There's only so much room in that HP case for one of these 5-bay enclosures. This particular one is small enough to fit. There are others out there. They may be cheaper, they may be more expensive, but I originally, when I first started doing this, building my own server, I bought one and it did not fit because it's way too long to fit into the case. It hits the power supply, and that's one thing I need to talk about too. The power supply on that HP Z420 is a 600 watt power supply, so you got plenty of power there. But at any rate, so I don't have the measurements here, but if you were to buy something other than this here, and again, this is on NewEGG, and I'll have the link below, you got to make sure that it's no bigger than this one here, or it won't fit in the case. All right, so let's talk about the hard drives for a minute. So again, I mentioned that the reason why these hard drives are such a reasonable price is because corporations, big corporations, they recycle their hard drives. So after so much use, years or whatever, a lot of times it's 5 years, it just depends on the company, then they dump those and then they sell them to recyclers. And I have rarely, I've had my other file server, which was my video server, probably for 4 or 5 years. I've never had a hard drive go bad in there, with the exception of when I first got that server, I put in desktop hard drives. Do not put a desktop hard drive in a server unless, because they are not made to run. You've got to find these server hard drives, and the HGST, even though it doesn't say server hard drive up there, they are server grade hard drives. And this particular hard drive here, it's $35. It's 6 gigabyte throughput, and in the introduction, I think I mentioned that they were 12 gigabyte. They aren't 12 gigabyte. I personally, the ones I bought are 12 gigabyte throughput. And so sometimes when you get those 12 gigabyte throughputs and you're using a 6 gigabyte controller, you have to go into the setup. But anyway, so let's move on. So here's the controller card. Now this is also very important when you buy these controller cards. And again, I'm going to have links to all these, but these links might only be good for so long because a lot of times you're buying these things from recyclers and they run out. But it doesn't mean you can't find them. You can. They come on the market all the time. So the the big takeaway here is you have to get it in IT mode, HBA mode, or where it says that it's for UnRaid or TrueNAS. If the card itself does its own RAID, like it says it's RAID 1, 5, 6, 10, you don't want to get that card, because you can't do a software RAID with those cards. It won't work right. The software won't be able to tell if a card drive's bad or anything, and you have to use the cards setup. Anyway, if you're doing a software RAID, which I do, which TrueNAS does, which UnRaid does, if you're doing Linux, Windows, they all can do software RAIDs. So keep that in mind. But this is a great price for these cards. Again, these are used, but great price. Okay, memory. Just so you know, this is ECC memory, server memory. So again, you know, depending on when you watch this, this might not be available anymore. So you want to do a search on. I always put in server memory, DDR3 server memory. Okay, so the whole thing here is that, and look at the price here, $30 for 64 gigs of RAM. That is amazing. That's an amazing price for RAM. And again, it's just because it's older RAM, but it works great in a server. And the reason why you don't necessarily need 64 gigs of RAM, if you want to save money, you can get 30 gigs, whatever. But I'm running TrueNAS, and the more RAM you throw at TrueNAS, the more efficient the server is. And where this RAM is cheap, why not? And so then what you're going to need is so 3 of your hard drives are going to go into the Z420 case, and you're going to need this adapter because we're putting in SAS drives. They're not SATA drives. Now, if you find some SATA drives at a good price, go ahead and buy them. But a lot of these server drives that come on the market now, they're SAS drives. They're no longer SATA drives. And so because the hard drive enclosure is a SAS and SATA compatible, but the SAS take a different connection, and so this is an adapter that allows you to plug in your power cords and your hard drive cord into that hard drive by plugging this first into the SAS connection on the hard drive, then plugging in your cables. So you'll need 3 of these, and those 3, I can't remember, it was $24 for 3. And again, shipping in hand. Now, why do I have the USB? Because a lot of times when you're using UnRaid, TrueNAS, you're putting your operating system on a flash drive. And so I just thought, personally, if you're going to put your operating system on a flash drive, that's why I got Samsung here, because I know it's a good quality drive and it will last longer. And I am going to talk more about this, about putting your operating system on a USB. I know it's really popular, TrueNAS and UnRaid, but maybe you're going to do Linux or you're going to do Windows. So we can talk about that option. It'll cost you just a little bit more to get a regular SATA drive. Okay, so now the CPU that we're putting in this is an E5 2670, and it's 8-core, 16 multi-threads. I think at the beginning of the video I misspoke and I said 10-core, 20 threads. That's because the E5 2670 V2 is a 10-core, 20 multi-threads. But $6, how can you beat that? And just so you know, if you want to use this server, put Plex on there or a couple other apps, it's got plenty of power to do that. And that's what I like about this particular platform is that there's, and if you want, you can get a little bit more powerful CPU than this 2670, and I'll go over that in a minute. But that's what I like about this platform, is you got a lot of flexibility. Okay, so let's talk about some options here. Now, let's talk about, then these are just options. And there's one option I forgot to put on here, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. And so you got a SATA power splitter, I got it at $9. You got a video card, I'll explain that. You got an 8-port 12 gigabyte controller, and when would you need that? That's $75. Then you got a 10 gig network card for $50. Let me go over those real quick. The reason why I get this is it really just kind of expands the cable on top where I'm going to plug in the 5-bay. It's more out of convenience. You don't have to have this. I just buy it because it makes it easier for me to plug the power cables into that into the 5-bay enclosure. So that's the only reason why these are here. It's just more for convenience than anything. You don't need them. Okay, so video cards, sometimes depending on the system you buy, a lot of those HP Z420s are bare bone. What that means is there's no RAM, there's no CPU, no hard drive. Okay, and that's one reason why I'm also going over the CPU stuff, because you're going to have to buy a CPU. And again, it may or may not come with a video card, or you may have one, but this could add another $10 to the price of it. I have extra video cards that I could just throw in, so for me, it's not really costing me an extra money for the system, but you may have to spend that $10 on a video card. And again, and that's from eBay. And some of these things were coming from Amazon. Some are coming from eBay, and in the links below I will have that broken out, which ones are coming from Amazon and eBay. I'm not affiliate to any of those yet, and so I'm not making money off of those. I'm just doing it more out of convenience. Now let me talk about the controller card. Again, most of these cards are LSI controller cards, but it might say Dell on there. This one says Super Micro, but if you notice, if you look at the description, it still says it's an LSI card, because LSI makes most of these network control cards. It's just that they brand them out, and so Super Micro could put their name on it, Dell could put their name on it, HP could put their name on it. But this is when you would need a 12 gigabyte card. If you want high performance out of your server, that you're going to be putting in a 10 gigabit NIC, and you want to be able to transfer at 10 gigabit speed, you will need a 10 gigabit controller. The only other way around that is you put in an SSD or a NVMe that can handle the transfer over first, then copy it over. But to tell you the truth, TrueNAS is so fast with its RAM, and if you put in this 12 gigabit card, and if you also too, I have to mention, if you're going 12 gigabit, you've got to go 12 gigabit on the hard drive, 12 gigabit on the LSI controller, and then 10 gigabit on your network card if you want 10 gigabit speed. And I finally upgraded to this, so I talked about that I retired my old server, and my new video server is one of these Z420s, and it's all 10 gigabit. Everything's 12 gigabit on the hard drives and on the controller. But again, this is just an option. You don't have to do this, and you're going to have a great server. Don't worry, your performance on your server is still going to be great if you go with the 6 gigabit platform or throughput on your hard drives and controller card. Okay, so and so the next one is the NIC. If you want to go 10 gigabit, you can usually get them between $35 and $50. And then the best way to look for one is just type in this 10 gig and then X540, and that'll bring up Dell and Intel cards. There are other cards out there other than Dell and Intel, but at least this one you're going to know that you're getting an RJ45. You have to be really careful when you're looking at 10 gigabit NICs that are used, because sometimes they're going to be, the cheaper ones are the PFS, where they take a PFS cable. But I don't have any PFS stuff. I want everything RJ45. So be careful if you're going to do a 10 gigabit networking and get a card. And I'll have a link down below also on my 10 gigabit networking video. Okay, this is another option, and I didn't have that in the slide. This is what I do, but I know a lot of people run TrueNas and UnRaid off of a USB. You want a good quality USB, and that's why I put the Samsung there. But I will use these. These are SSD external hard drives. I call them hybrids because they plug into your USB. Both of these brands here come with the cables also, and you can do either one. but I've been using this brand and another brand for years, and I have never had a problem with them because USBs can wear out faster than an SSD, and that's why I go with these. But then again, you can use the USB. A lot of people do it, but that's why I say this is just an option. So I will put my TrueNAS operating system on one of these instead of a USB. Okay, so I know I'm going through this really quick, but let me just really quick talk about the CPU and the HP Z420. If you want more flexibility in a CPU and a server, and don't get me wrong, that E5, I'm going to be running that E5 2670 on my backup server. It's a great CPU, but if you wanted some maybe a little bit more power, which I don't know what you're planning on running on your server, you can go ahead and look for an HP Z420. Put V2 in the description. Unfortunately, they still charge a lot for these. I wish they'd come down. You're looking at $120 to $150 for a V2 HP Z420 V2. I think it's ridiculous that they still can get that price for them, but they take the V2 adapters and or the V2 CPUs. So when you and that's really the difference there. I personally, if you're just using this as a file server, maybe running Plex and maybe another app or two, then I would just stay with the 2670 V1. All right, I hope that was helpful. Let's go ahead and look at the controller setup. So up in the upper right corner is a little mini display, and that is for the LSI controller card. And we're going to hit Control-C to go into this setup there. Sometimes you need to do this when the hard drives are 12 gigabit. Now the ones that I put on there are 6, but it should see all those. And then if you go out, so when it's in the LSI, again up in the upper right corner, it should show 8 hard drives. So we have 8 hard drives connected. So I don't know why it does this, but for some reason when you are when they're 12 gigabit per second, if you just go into the controller card and exit out, then it will go ahead and see the drives after that. I don't know why that makes a difference. If it's 6 gigabit per second drives, it should see them automatically. And I'm not going to go through the install of FreeNAS right here. This isn't really a video on how to install FreeNAS and stuff like that, but I just wanted to show the controller card, and then but I do want to show one thing in FreeNAS, so bear with me and then the video's over. Okay, as you can see, we're in TrueNAS here, and just so you know, the thing that irritates me about hard drives is that they can claim that they're 6 terabytes when they're really not, or 8 terabytes, however they want to claim that. I mean, here my hard drives are really 5.46, so I really have only a total of 45 terabytes. But I'm not going to stripe this, so I'm going to do RAID 5. Now in this particular case, where there's 8, technically I probably should do RAID 2 or RAID 6. Then that would give me 2 hard drives that could fail. But where this is a backup, as long as my other server is working fine, I can have my backup have hard drive 2 hard drive failures. So I'm gonna do in TrueNAS RAID 5 is RAID Z. So I'm just gonna do RAID Z and create this, which now gives me 38 terabytes. Okay, so really quick, I just want to show here, I've got TrueNAS installed now. It's showing I've got
36.6 available. I'm on my Windows machine right here, and it's showing that I have 36.6. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. This is the least expensive way to get a large server going. If you don't need 8 drives, or you can't afford those, you can maybe put in 4s, but this is an option. And again, put UnRaid on it, Windows, whatever you want to do. All right, well, thank you. This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Have a great day.
Now that was easy.